Hi, I'm Judy Ruth. This is Tracy Lee, and we're in Passing Conversations, and we welcome you today. We had a conversation a couple weeks ago, and I have some follow-up questions to that. We talked about funeral services, and I have some follow-up questions. So, Tracy, is that okay if we just start with that? All right. So, how can a funeral director ensure that my wishes are carried out? How does that work?
Well, when you come into the funeral home, we're going to sit down and we're going to do, usually it's called an arrangement conference, but if you're not funding, it's not really a pre-need situation, we're just arranging. And so what we're going to do is we're going to fill out the paperwork with your wishes, and so that we have a record of what you want, and we'll have you sign that. And on that document is also a place to sign where it says that it's okay to change those wishes, or it's not okay, that it needs to stay just like it is. And so we'll put a file in the cabinet for you with that information, and then when you pass and your family comes in, we'll pull that out and take a look at it with them and say, okay, this is what she wanted. Maybe she said you could make some changes, maybe she didn't. We'll go over that. But you can also, in planning, you can plan everything except maybe one or two things that gives them some choices. But we hope that you've spoken with them before you come in, so that they're aware.
So that kind of brings me to the next question. Now, this isn't going to happen in my family. they all get along, and there's nothing.
They really do. They're very. I love your kids.
Yeah, they love you too. And there's nothing to fight over. But I assume that there are people, families that come in with conflicts and disagreements. How do you handle that? And what are some of the things you've been faced with?
Well, there are families that come in with pre-existing issues. And there are families who come in that get along very well and then find that they have some issues. So, I really can't express enough the importance of speaking with your children and those people around you prior to planning. But we have made accommodations for certain families. For instance, we've had families that have had to have separate funerals. Like one side of the family comes on Wednesday and does their funeral, and the other comes on Thursday and has their funeral. And then at the cemetery, they just stand apart. One family stands on this side, one family stands on that side. We've also had families that have had to have two different register books because they didn't want some people's names in their book. Some have different programs because they want a different obituary or different poetry or whatever in their program. Some you just really never know. And like some people say, for instance, and I know that to begin with, you and I are related. We are.
Right. Her father is my first cousin, so that makes us cousins, but that doesn't make us best friends. And we are friends, best friends.
Glad to hear it. But for instance, we have an uncle that when he was a young man, I believe he had joined a certain religion, and then he went into the military and gave up religion. Then, but his family was another religion, his wife and his children. And then later on in life, he decided to rejoin his religion, which really offended his wife and his children, because they had been religious all that time and he hadn't. And then all of a sudden, when he decides to get religion, he doesn't go with their religion. And so that was difficult for them. So in families like that, so for instance, his wife's side of the family is a certain religion, but his particular side of the family, us, we are a different religion than that family. And so although this didn't happen in our family, I have had it happen with other families. So because of religious reasons, there are two options that I have been able to that my clients have come to grips with. They either have two services, one type, maybe it's Baptist, maybe the other is Nazarene. So you have a Baptist service and a Nazarene service. But the other way that we have been able to handle that is they have the services together. So they have the Methodist preacher will give a, pastoral remarks, and then the Nazarene preacher will give different pastoral remarks. But they do it together, and I don't know which one really works better for the family. I always think that if you can bring a family together, especially at this time, and help them mend those difficulties in their heart or those broken fences, it's the best thing to do. So I always try, if they're not feuding or fighting, to try to get them to come together, because that's the best way for them to start healing and to bring their family back together, because they've both suffered a terrible loss. When you lose a loved one, it's just devastating. So if you can bring that family together and mend those fences and have them solidify their love and their bonds, that's the best thing you can do for them. So we try to help them with that, but it doesn't always work.
So is there some kind of pecking order? Do you know who's in charge?
Oh, absolutely. Legally, there is a person who is in charge, and that person is the next of kin. Now, a lot of families don't understand next of kin. Our family is one of them. So
we're all involved.
Yes, it's like everybody thinks they're the next of kin. But if you have, let's say, for instance, a man passes, and he has a wife, his wife is the next of kin.
Right.
If he doesn't have a wife, his children are the next of kin. They're all equally the next of kin. What will determine who's in charge will be them. They'll say, well, look, we want Judy to be in charge. Or maybe they don't decide that, and what happens is maybe Judy doesn't have the money to pay for it, because the law legally is whoever pays takes that spot of next of kin. And the reason for that is because that person's money is being spent, and you can't tell that person how to spend their money. That person decides how their money is going to be spent. So let's say that a family comes in, and the person who should be the next of kin doesn't have the money to be the next of kin, and some distant relative decides, oh, I have plenty of money, I'll pay for that. But they don't want to be next of kin, so they can relinquish their next of kinship to the person who really is next of kin. They sign a document, it's called a document of abandonment, but It's not. It's just that they abandon their position as next of kin and hand it back to that particular person. Or they may decide they want to keep being next of kin, or maybe they want to assign someone else to be next of kin. That is their prerogative. And so, we've had families both ways that they, it's just how they feel.
What if the couple's separated but not divorced? Does the wife still, excuse me, or the spouse still has the say-so?
Well, that's just like if he dies and they're not divorced, she gets the property.
Right.
That's the way it is. But if she can't pay for it, or she doesn't want to be involved with it, she can relinquish that right to someone else. Now, I've also had a case where a man has passed, and he had 3 ex-wives and a current wife. And there are conflicts in that situation, because some of those ex-wives still have love, and they have children with that man, and they want their children's rights to be looked after because maybe their children are forgotten at the services, and so it creates a lot of problems. So like I said, if you will just discuss it with your family and take care of those issues before you get here, it will save them so much heartache that will follow them through life.
Okay, moving on.
Okay.
What kind of paperwork do we need? Certificates, permits, and when someone passes away, what is needed?
Well, everyone needs certain documents, but
Right.
some people need additional documents. And so everyone needs, they have to have something proving their birth date. And sometimes that's a birth certificate or a driver's license or a state-issued ID or something that proves legally that this is their birthday. And I say that because you could come in and you could tell me your birthday, And then when you pass, we enter that birthday in, but perhaps you are a little forgetful, you know, you've actually forgotten what your birthday is and you've given us the wrong date. Well, we turn that in. We're mandated to turn that birth date and date of death into, for instance, Social Security. So if your birth date is wrong, now your Social Security is messed up. Or if you have life insurance, now that's messed up because they are saying you're a different person. So your family now has a real issue with the life insurance policy. So you need a document proving your birth date. And I would suggest that prior to your death, if you have life insurance or any type of insurance, you go back and match that birth date to the documentation, because we have had people who have passed where like their life insurance has a different birth date than their driver's license or whatever, and the insurance company is not obligated to pay you because you are a different person at that point. Your legal documents show a different birth date. They've been insuring someone for a birth date that doesn't exist. So we've had that happen. Usually it's a long time settlement, but the insurance company, if they can prove the ownership and birth date of the policy, they will adjust the policy. But it's not usually in the person's favor. It's usually in the company's favor. Yeah.
So when you say we have to have this information and we turn it in, who's we?
Okay.
Is that me or you?
Okay, let's say we're talking about you passing.
Okay.
Okay. If you come in and do your arrangements, you can bring all of that paperwork in with you, and I'll finish saying what paperwork that is, but you can bring all of that with you when you do your arrangement. We can make copies of everything, and we can notarize them that, yes, you brought this in, this is legal, yada, 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 and we stick it in your file. And really that is the best way to do it, because your children or your spouse is not going to be able to find your paperwork. Case in point, I have a friend whose husband passed unexpectedly. It's been over a year. I am still, because I've been made her POA, I am still fighting with the state of California and Tijuana, Mexico, trying to get marriage certificates, divorce decrees, and they all have to be certified. And they don't want to let those things go because you're not the person who they belong to. So far it's already taken a year, which means her insurance has not taken effect. She doesn't have medical coverage like she should. She's not getting her husband's retirement. I mean, it's just all kinds of stuff that it's really a nightmare. So if you'll bring those documents and let us copy them, we at least have them and we can help your survivor. But let's say that you don't do that. For instance, my father, he has decided that he has put what he considers important in an envelope and has put it somewhere in his house. Okay, I don't know where that somewhere is. Nor do I know what documents he has considered important, because he may not know what all documents need to be in there. So that could be a problem. There may also be another person living in that home that won't give us access to the home. Then that would be yet another problem. So there are all kinds of problems with that. So if you can bring it into the funeral home, let us make some copies. They won't be certified copies, but we'll have copies from which to work, so that we could guarantee that we have proper dates and things like that. So you have your birth record that you need. You absolutely need to have your Social Security card, because your name may be Judy Ruth Maranto, but on your Social Security card, it may be Judy Ruth Skaggs.
Right.
And so when we go to file your documents with the Social Security office, and your married name, your driver's license, everything says Judy Ruth Maranto, but your Social Security says Judy Ruth Skaggs, when we file that, if it's not Skaggs, there's a problem with Social Security. If you have a dependent who's supposed to get your Social Security, now there's a problem, because your name is not what they show. And your true legal name is whatever Social Security says it is. So if you've gotten married and you haven't changed your name, get on it, because that's not going to work for you. It's not going to work out well. So you have your birth record, your Social Security record, any marriage records, and divorce records. All of them. If
Oh,
you've
dear.
been married 3 or 4 times, you need every single one of them, because retirements are predicated on those dates. And so you have to have that. So is Social Security. So you need all of those dates, and they require documentation, not just your word. So you have your birth record, your Social Security, your marriage records. And so those really are the main records, but there's a lot of information also that you have to have in addition to that. And so we'll go over all that. But those legal records need to come with you.
Now, do I get the death certificate? I mean, if it's somebody in my family, do I send off for the death? How do you get the death certificate? Who
Okay.
gets it and who needs
So
it?
the funeral home, when you pass, the funeral director has 24 hours to enter your information, your name, excuse me, your name, your Social Security number, your date of birth, your date of death, your spouse, your address, all of that kind of stuff, into an electronic registry, which is a death registry. So we've registered your death. That immediately we notify also Social Security. And then after that, those records are electronically sent to whoever is the death certifier. So the justice of the peace, the doctor, the nurse, whoever certified your death. And they have to certify that, yes, this person has passed, so this information that the funeral home has put into this record is true. So they sign that, and they'll put your cause of death on there, because the funeral home doesn't have the cause of death. And then, so they'll enter that. Then that comes back to us, and we have to check and make sure that everything is entered in there correctly. And then we sign it, that we certify that everything is correct. And that goes to the state electronically. So the state now has that in their possession. Then they go through and they verify and all that kind of stuff. And then when we send that to them, when it goes to their office, there's also an order for the amount of death certificates that you've requested, and payment is issued. So you will pay the funeral home for those death certificates. Then once it's all taken care of in the state capital, then they will issue those death certificates, and they'll send it to wherever the funeral home is designated for it to be sent. So it usually comes to the funeral home so we can check it over one last time, make sure if you ordered 10, you got 10, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And then we'll call you and you come pick them up at the funeral home, or we can mail them out to you. But those records are so important that I really don't suggest that you send them out in the mail, unless they're registered or something, because if anyone intercepts those, the identity of the decedent can be lost or stolen. And where that comes into play, let's say that your husband dies and your death certificates are intercepted in the mail. Now your husband's identity has been stolen, which means your identity has too, because that person who has taken that can take all of your money, they can steal your home. I mean, they can do all kinds of stuff. So that certificate, it is a legal certified certificate, needs to be safeguarded. And you actually only need those for particular reasons. I know a lot of people say, well, I want a copy. They don't need a copy, nor should they have a certified copy, because now the identity is out there on a certified document that can be used at the bank or wherever. So if you have people who want a copy and you're willing to give them a copy, make them a black and white photocopy. Yeah, not a color copy, and certainly not a certified copy. So you need those copies for anything that is a real property, like a home, a vacation home, a vehicle, anything that carries a title or a mortgage. And then you need them, so that's the first category. The next thing you need them for is anything that's financial, so like a bank, insurance, retirement accounts, Social Security, anything like that. Then the next thing that you need them for is a utility. So any utility. So you have your financial things, your titled things, and your utility things. So like the cell phone has to have a certified death certificate to detach that or turn it off. Your electricity, your gas, your water, trash, cable, all these things that you don't even think about.
So is 10 enough? 10 death certificates enough?
Maybe not, because if you, let's say that you have stocks in, I don't know, 20 different companies, or, you're going to need 20 just for that. You need one for each thing. Maybe you have bank accounts in 4 different banks. So you need 4 each for one of those banks. And then if you have your car mortgaged somewhere else, financed somewhere else, you need something for that. Maybe your furniture is mortgaged, so you need one for that. There's just all kinds of things, because you have to get that person's name off of those records. Otherwise, you can't sell them. You can't donate them. You have to continue to insure that person as well as yourself. You can't move because you can't turn off the utilities.
Right.
There's all kinds of things. So you do need those death certificates. So when you come in to the funeral home, they'll help you add all of those things up. But you have to know that information yourself, because we don't know how many investment accounts you have, or how many homes you own, or vehicles, or anything like that. So you need all that information.
So what role does a will play in the process, the funeral process? And probate and all that, I don't know.
Wills are an interesting document. A will, you think a will carries all this weight and is going to fix everything. It doesn't. It is certainly recommended that you have one, and really necessary, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be followed, because you may own this mansion of a home, right? And you want to will it to your daughter, but you have a mortgage on it, and maybe she can't afford that mortgage, and so you will that home to her. Well, now she has this mortgage that the bank at that point can say, we want it paid in full. Maybe you owe $2 million on it. She doesn't have $2 million, nor does she have the capability of borrowing that kind of money. She's lost the home. Or maybe, like just recently, my husband's brother passed, and right before he passed, there was a situation so that his will didn't take effect. And so the things that he willed to my husband and our children, we don't have. They're stuck in a probate court, and they've been there for 2 years for no reason at all. So, there are all kinds of things that interfere with a will. So if you have a will, make sure that you also have a trust.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, a trust is going to help you more than a will.
And I was going to say the reverse mortgage.
Oh my
Nightmare,
gosh.
The nightmare.
People don't understand what a reverse
No, they
mortgage
don't.
is. And a reverse mortgage, I'm not a financial person.
Right.
But from what I have seen at the funeral home, if say your mom has a reverse mortgage on her house and she passes, now what has happened is that home that was paid for and that she has in her will to go to you now has a mortgage on it. And not just a mortgage with an interest rate that you didn't negotiate, and so it can be a real problem for families.
And too, if the spouse is still living, survives the spouse,
Right.
then they're going to have to pay up. you know, so it's
and it's like that.
right. It's
due.
instant. You
Yeah,
have
it's
to pay
due
or
right
get
then.
out.
So a lot of times people they find themselves in a terrible
situation. Yeah.
financial bind. It's just, I understand that some people need to finance their home and do the reverse mortgage, but the bank is in business for making money, not helping you out.
Right.
So, and just keep that in mind.
Right.
That you're making a deal with someone who has their best interest and their stockholders' interest forefront rather than your best interest. So, it really depends on your situation.
Thank you. And this is a checklist, a funeral planning checklist that you've come up with.
Yes.
Do you want to kind of give us an overview of what that is? And
Well, this checklist just it goes over the things that you need to be aware of when someone passes and what you need to have gathered. This is it's a 4-page list, and it has a lot of things that you also need to consider, like out-of-town guests, restaurant arrangements, things like that. How are you going to feed all these people coming into town? Where are they going to be housed? That sort of thing. So what are you going to do with all the children, that need to have a babysitter or something? So those kinds of things are on here that you need to think about and be prepared for. And then this will be on our website, which is www.passingconversations.com. There'll be a little tab there where you can download this and print it out. And I'm putting together a portfolio that you can also download. It's not there yet, but it'll be there within a few days. And this will have places for you to actually go in and write your information. So you'll put your birth date, you know, if you're in the military, what your entry and exit date was, stuff like that, or were. And then you will be able to have this that you can take to the funeral home with you, but also put those documents with it. Make the copies of the documents and put that in there. And when you go to make your arrangements, you can just take this with you, and it's really all just done. If you haven't pre-arranged and it's at time of death, this is a lifesaver because you don't know where to find those documents, and you can't remember those dates, you can't remember people's names,
Right.
cities, those sorts of things. So this is really, this is a gold mine for you.
And this is free, right?
Oh yes, absolutely free. You'll just download it and print it at home.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us today at Passing Conversations. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and we appreciate you being here. Thanks.